Hello my friends and welcome back. In today's video, I will analyze three of the most extraordinary people who ever walked on this earth. There are three individuals who we are told that they are almost godlike personalities, and their deeds and characters are to be revered. While a certain part of the story is accurate, there is another part of the story who is not told or often told. In the name of truth, I will try to inform you about the other side of the story of these three individuals that are so revered, without taking anything away from this part of the story that we're taught, and they're pushed up like being gods. Uh, they ignore the other part, which would make them very, very, very much humans, and they will just diminish these accomplishments, or at least they put a dent in their characters. The three individuals I will discuss today are Nelson Mandela, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and the third one is Mahatma Gandhi. Now, I am 100% certain you know all these names and you know how the story goes regarding all these three individuals. I will start with Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela, I will not go to the good side that he's portrayed, for um, his fight for his people in South Africa, a terrible regime, apartheid regime. Um, but the thing is, when you fight against a regime, you don't uh, injure, you don't hurt, you don't kill, you don't destroy the collateral, the population, the children, schools, infrastructure, trains, innocent civilians. If you do that, you cross a line from a freedom fighter to a terrorist. If you don't believe me, just go and look at the definition of terrorism in the dictionaries that we still have available, and sometimes we are allowed to look into and learn the meanings of words. And if those meanings are not politically correct, then we are, for instance, sanctioned by YouTube. So I will start with Mandela. I have to say here first that he was considered a terrorist until 2008 by the US government. 2008. His organization and he himself. He was not taken off those lists. So he was part of the African National Congress, Mandela, and this Congress was also in contact and in connection with the Communist Party in South Africa. This African National Congress deliberately targeted civilians in their fight for equality, freedom, and all these very beautiful notions that we cherish. Um, Nelson Mandela was the leader of the terrorist wing of the African National Council and South African Communist Party, this is the name of the terrorist wing, Konto we Zigwa, parentheses MK. Um, Mandela was caught and arrested in 1964. He pled guilty of 156 acts of public violence and planned bombing. For instance, Johannesburg railroad station, where a lot of civilians died, children, schools, and so on. So this is he meets the definition of terrorism, which I can't really read it here because I don't know if the owners of truth nowadays will allow that because they probably have a different definition nowadays. But the South African president at that time, Botha, on a number of occasions, he offered Nelson Mandela freedom from prison if he would publicly denounce terrorism, terrorist violence. Nelson Mandela refused, so he stayed in prison. So, in order to achieve a goal, obviously you have to sometimes make mistakes. But he was purposely targeting civilians with his terrorist wing of African National Congress in order to achieve his goals. Now imagine that, for instance, I don't know, other country, other people would do this in the United States to achieve a goal. We're gonna kill civilians who are not active combatants. This is Mandela. I will not go to talk about his extramarital, infidelities that he had, which again will make him from a godlike um, figure to a very human figure and not a very moral figure. But that's with Mandela. And I wonder why he's not never, publicly, he's not on a mainstream media or on books. He's not exposed as, or his side of this is not exposed. We hear about him being imprisoned and poor guy, which, yeah, poor guy, but why he was imprisoned? Not because a black guy fighting for freedom in Africa. Okay, might have been a part of it for his crimes against civilians, terrorist activity. And this is going to get me to the second godlike figure, and his name is Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was a lawyer, and he besides being, he professed, nonviolent actions in order to get rid of the British Empire's rule in India, and eventually also due to some global cataclysms, he succeeded, which very good. But I don't know how many of you know that he was an hypocrite and he possibly was a sexual molester. So let's go with the first, with the sexual molester here. So we have here. There's a more than one book that talk about Gandhi's, in order to test his chastity, he used to sleep with naked with granddaughters and grandnieces, and nothing happened. He's too strong, and even if he said that he was not able to always, succeed. Let me read you a little bit here about this Gandhi. No, yeah. He first he um, this was one of the aspects. He was to bathe with children and naked with children, girls, boys. Um, that's one of the things that this guy did. And it says here that at the age of 38 in 1906, he took a vow of Brahmachara. This is from the Independent from April 7th, 2010. The truth about Gandhi's sex life. Thrill of the chaste. Chaste. And he said, it says here that at the age of 38, 1906, he took a vow of Brahmacharya, which meant living a spiritual life, but in normally referred to chastity, which such a life is deemed impossible by Hindus. And meanwhile, Gandhi was challenging his abstinence in his own way. He set up ashrams in which he began to first experiments with sex. His first experiments with sex, boys and girls, were to bathe and sleep together chastely, but when but were punished for any sexual talk. Men and women were segregated, and Gandhi's advice was that husbands should not be alone with their wives, and when they felt passion, they should take a cold bath. The rules did not, however, apply to him. Sushila Nayar, the attractive sister of Gandhi's secretary, also his personal physician, attended Gandhi from girlhood. She used to sleep and bathe with Gandhi. When challenged, Gandhi, explained how he ensured decency was not offended. While she is bathing, I keep my eyes tightly shut. He said, I do not know whether she bathed naked or with her underwear on. So he just kept his eyes shut. And he was sleeping with underage girls, and he was naked. And um, so let's go here. He it says here that he used to sleep with, as I say, grand nieces, and he was able to stay strong and not do anything about it. Then Gandhi was also a racist in his writings and in his speeches, where he thought that there was an Aryan brotherhood, and he thought that Africans are inferior, less than Indians or Europeans. That's another statement that he did. The third one that I would like to mention is his hypocrisy. And I will use this story about Gandhi. It says in August 1942, Gandhi and his wife, Kasturba, among others, were imprisoned by the British in Aga Khan Palace near Pune. Kasturba had poor circulation, and she weathered several heart attacks. While detained in the palace, she developed bronchial pneumonia. One of her four sons, Devadas, wanted her to take penicillin. Gandhi refused. He was okay with her receiving traditional remedies, such as water from the Ganges, but he refused her any medicines, including this newfangled antibiotic, saying that the Almighty would have to heal her. The Life and Death of Mahatma Gandhi quotes him on February 19th, 1944. If God wills is, he will put her through. Gandhi, a life adds his wisdom. Gandhi, a life adds this window of wisdom from the Mahatma. You cannot cure your mother now, no matter what uh, wonder drugs you may muster. She is in God's hands now. 3 days later, Devadas was still pushing for the penicillin, but Gandhi shot back. Why don't you trust God? Now his wife died that day. The next night, Gandhi cried out, But how God tested my faith. But how God tested my faith. He told one of his wife's doctors that the antibiotic wouldn't have saved her, and that allowing her to have it would have meant the bankruptcy of my faith. Emphasize on my faith. But Gandhi's faith was much of an obstacle a short time later when it was his ass on the line. A mere 6 weeks after his wife died, Gandhi was flattened by malaria. He said that he stuck to an all liquid diet of his doctors tried to convince him to take quinine. But Gandhi completely refused and died of the disease, right? No, actually, after 3 weeks of deterioration, he took the diabolical drug and quickly recovered. So this is a lot of hypocrisy. When his wife needed medicine, he said that God will help and it's forbidden. But when he needed, he took it. So he was a hypocrite, uh, very possible a child molester, and a racist. This Mahatma Gandhi. Let's move now to the third individual, which is Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who he was a minister, he was a doctor, and he was a very moral and decent person, we're told. Well, there are some testimonies and reports from, for instance, CIA, even from that woman, Jackie Kennedy, uh, one of JFK's women who married him, the only one who married him. And she says here, for instance, Jackie Kennedy, I just can't see a picture of Martin Luther King without thinking, that man's terrible. My husband, JFK, told me of a tape that the FBI of Martin Luther King when he was calling up all these girls and arranging for a party of men and women. I mean, sort of an orgy in the hotel and everything. This is from ABC News, September 8, 2011. So he had a lot of sex with prostitutes and extramarital affairs, and he was a minister. And this is kind of like very much hypocritical. Not that we are perfect. I'm not implying that, but we are not considered, godlike, and we don't have a day in the United States that we have revere. Yes, his fight was a fantastic fight. I agree with almost everything he said about the movement, and we should be judged by the content of our characters instead of our relationships, our color of our skins, and so on. That's fantastic. But you can't say it nowadays because you will be deemed somehow something if you say like that. Then he was a womanizer. He was a Marxist. There are, if you check online, you're gonna find pictures with him at a training school for communists. He's over there pictured, Mr. Martin Luther King. He his friendly biographer David Garrow in his book said that Martin Luther King was surrounded by communists, and privately he described himself as a Marxist. So the school of communists that I'm referring to is that famous a picture with, and it says here that Highlander Folk School was a training school for communists located in Monteagle, Tennessee. And then you have it here in Labor Day weekend, 1957, Martin Luther King in the first row. We know what communist is, and we know the communists are evil and have an evil ideology. Who, the evil ideology killed more than 100 million people. Nevertheless, this guy was considering and describing himself as a Marxist communist. So bad person. And if you're a Marxist, how can you be a preacher, a minister? And the last point, he earned his doctorate. He was a doctor, PhD, not medical doctor, which is an extraordinary achievement. The problem is he plagiarized that. Now, when I went to college here, we had to sign all kind of forms that if we were found plagiarizing, we would be expelled from the university. Well, this gentleman and then was not expelled. He earned his PhD, and you can find information on internet. Even the person who he copied his thesis from, and I think it was like 41 or 40 some percent plagiarism from this guy's thesis for others. And the thing is, it's not post-mortem his award should be taken away. If you achieved something in a illegal way, you shouldn't be allowed to have that. Nevertheless, he's still doctor here. And regarding this Martin Luther King Jr.'s indecencies with women and parties and all that, with prostitutes, and that brings me to how harshly another person was, you know, was characterized and attacked for his indecencies and in the current environment. I'm not talking in the 50s or 60s where the society was more, I would say, cleaner, or at least things like this were not in out in the open. Uh, like right now, it's more acceptable. So I'm thinking about former President Donald Trump, about grabbing women by the, even if he didn't say I would, he said if you do that, they will do that. But it was out of context, and people just listen to the tape. And he said, he gave an example: if you do this, they will do this. He's not saying I do this, I did this. It could imply that, but it's not acceptable. If I give you an example, it didn't mean that I did that. Nevertheless, he was attacked how immoral he was, which he was, but not his talk. And then you can take Stormy Daniels, it's called now adult star, porn star. That's what they are, porn stars. And ladies of the night, don't think so. I don't think they are just ladies, and that's their job. They are what they are. And he did this with her, and oh my God. Phew. Now you can say, well, it's not the same proportion. Well, you apply the same law, same rule, don't you? And I don't hear you saying anything about, not you, the mass media and all these guys, the protectors of the truth. I don't hear them saying anything about Martin Luther King and his thing. Repeatedly. FBI, I read somewhere it was about 40 and 45 incidents, or women or something. I don't. I mean, that even surpasses Bill Clinton and other presidents who had mistresses, and Roosevelt and Wilson, and you can go, I guess, and get most of them. Uh, so anyway, I just wanted to. I had this hypocrisy that I observed wherever I went, in the academia, in the mass media, and in society in general, when when you can't talk about these guys in a less revering way than like you talk about a god. And I was always, what's going on here? I mean, at least calm down a little bit, or just call the things the way they are. So a lot of hypocrisy here, a lot of hiding, and a lot of creation. Myth creation. So thank you for being with me today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, find it, and be just. See you next time. Ciao.